Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Kevin O'Brien here at Mansfield Lutheran Church with another edition of Pastor Ponderings, where we explore topics of the Bible, of faith, and Christian living. And the topic I have for today is quite an opportune one to talk about, as obviously this past year has been a difficult year for the entire world, but especially here in the United States with COVID-19. And there's an aspect of faith that really collides with the pandemic and what we have been through, and that is the relationship between science and faith. Now, historically, those two ideas, those two points of view have not always gotten along. It seems like that science and faith are battling each other and that they're contradictory to something. So you can either be a scientist or a Christian, a faithful believer. But today I'm going to tell you that that's not true. It wasn't true 500 years ago, even though there were a lot of church powers at that time that thought it was. And it's not true today. And more, the church, the capital C church, all of us around the world, is getting in line with this. And this is my personally held belief as well, is that science is not a contradiction to faith. Science does not contradict faith. There are certain things as faithful people that we know science won't understand, like the existence of God. Science is not going to prove or disprove the existence of God. So we have to take it by faith. But there's a lot of things that science can lead that benefits faith. In fact, my personal belief is that science is backwards creation. What I mean by that is I think that all creation stems from God, in all these ways that it branches out from God, to every blade of grass, to how molecules interact with each other, to how the universe is set up, to how I am set up. Everything comes from God's spark of creation. Science is just working backwards to figure out how God did it. So science is revealing the genius of God in creating a system that has molecules and atoms and elements and ways that certain atoms come together to form molecular compounds that create chemicals, that create people, that create stars, and how these things react to energy or to chaos. That's a lot of science in there. And I think what it is just discovering the framework that God used to create us. Weather is describing the framework, so in that case, we're talking about meteorology, is describing the laws of nature that God put in place on Earth and on other planets everywhere, right? God created everything. So science is not at odds with faith. In fact, I think science is very important to people of faith. Now, the biggest comment against this view that I get is, well, what about the Bible? The Bible talks about things that scientists say simply could not have happened. And that's a true statement. I do believe there are things in the Bible that scientifically cannot happen. Some of those things we need to take as a matter of faith. The resurrection of Christ is a matter of faith. There is no DNA evidence to prove that the tomb was empty. That Jesus returned to life, was resurrected. That is a matter of faith. And on other things, we understand that what we mean by truth in the Bible, it might be different than the kind of truth that when we talk about a history or a science textbook or a math textbook, something like this. And I describe this more in my other video talking about how to read the Bible, so I'll refer you to that. But the short version is that just because something in the Bible is written down doesn't mean that everything happened historically, scientifically, in that exact way, because a lot of times what the Bible is using is allegory and story and metaphor as those ways to describe God's relationship with you and I, which is much more the truth than did these things actually happen. A great example of this is actually the city of Jericho. And in Joshua, we hear the story of the Israelites who have moved into the promised land with Joshua, marching around the city 7 times, and the walls come tumbling down, right? Historically, we know that archaeological evidence says there weren't walls at Jericho at that time. We know where Jericho is. It's still there. But there simply were not walls at the time that the Israelites were described in being there. And so there's a lot of explanations for this. One is the archaeological evidence is wrong and there were walls. The Bible dates it poorly because dates get really messy when you're talking about thousands of years ago, and actually the Israelites were there when there were walls. Or that's not important to the story. The story of Joshua and the Israelite people coming from the land of Egypt out of the wilderness with Moses into the land of Canaan is a story about God fulfilling promises and how God's power is absolute power over the people of Jericho, over the people of Canaan, to describe how the Israelites got there. So whether it happened exactly the way Joshua says is less important than the understanding of who our God is, which is a God who delivers, which is a God who fulfills promises, which is a God who is powerful, and powerful not only for us, but for all people, regardless of your beliefs. That's truth. So I don't know which one of those are, and there are lots of things in the Bible, again, we have to take by faith, and we'll never know the answers to. That doesn't mean science is at odds with them. I want to circle back to the very beginning of this conversation now. I'm asserting that science is a gift. God gives us the gift of intelligence, of wisdom, of intellect, to be able to figure out these things, to figure out meteorology or archaeology and all these different sciences, as a gift to us to be just, to be good. And right now we're in the midst of a pandemic. And so God has given gifts of science know-how, of wisdom, of intelligence, of treasure, of unity for scientists to develop a vaccine against this virus that is hurting people, that is unjustly and indiscriminately killing us. And so to say you're not going to take the vaccine based on religious grounds, that you have faith in God over faith in science, is kind of a contradiction, because God is the creator of science as well. And so you're saying that you're not taking the gift of God because you believe in God. That doesn't make much sense. And so I do implore you this week, get vaccinated to figure out how to do it. I know that can be frustrating, especially in this area. I know there's a lot of frustrations around getting the COVID vaccine. But I myself am vaccinated because I want to make sure that I am not accidentally, unjustly hurting someone else by spreading this vaccine. And when we everyone who is able to get the vaccine, we protect those who are not able to because of immune systems and things like that. So science is an ally to us in faith. It is not a contradiction. It's not foolproof. It is not our absolute truth. Again, there are things we take by faith, but it is a gift from God. And this week, I'm encouraging all of you to use that gift to go out and get vaccinated. So thank you so much for being with me this week. And as we think about faith, we think about COVID and hopefully beating it. We're just about there. We're not quite there yet. And vaccinations, I encourage you, keep going. Keep the faith. Learn science and trust it in so much as it can help us and be just, and get vaccinated. And remember, as always, to watch for God. Amen.